director reports on the India service sector that shed light on the evolving dynamics of India's services sector, both in terms of economic value and employment generation. So, to begin with the proceedings, I request Dr. Sonia Pant, Program Director NITI Aayog, to kindly deliver the welcome remarks and set the tone of the today's event. Hand over.
Thank you, Deepak. Honorable Member Services, Dr. Arvind Virmani, sir. Respected CEO, sir. Respected Chief Economic Advisor, Dr. Anantha, sir. And distinguished colleagues from central government as well as state government. We are indeed very happy that you joined us today, given us your time. Representatives from industry bodies, academia, colleagues and seniors from NITI Aayog, and friends from media. Good morning and a very, very warm welcome to this launch event. Today marks a very special day for NITI Aayog. We are here to release 2 in-house reports prepared by NITI's Services Division. The Services Division is one of the youngest in NITI and has been created exclusively to focus on the services sector, which is the largest and the fastest growing contributor to the India economy. The 2 inaugural reports that we are about to release today are titled India Services Sector Insights from GVA Trends and State Level Dynamics. The other report is titled India Services Sector Insights from Employment Trends and State Level Dynamics. Both these reports are among the first dedicated assessments of the services sector from a macro lens of output and employment. These reports go beyond aggregate trends and they present a disaggregated view as well as sector and state level profiles. The 2 reports together present a comprehensive view of India's services-led transformation, looking at both growth dynamics and employment patterns. We all know that the services sector is expanding across regions, with emerging states gaining momentum and overall growth becoming more broad-based and inclusive. These reports are also highlighting the role of services as a major driver of jobs, especially in the post-pandemic period, while requiring us to address the problems of informality and the skill gaps. And we believe that together these reports will provide a roadmap for harnessing technology, innovation and human capital to sustain India's next phase of growth. I would like to convey my heartfelt thanks to all of you today for joining us as we celebrate this important milestone for NITI's Services Division. These reports reflect the remarkable progress that has happened across India and the possibilities that lie ahead. We look forward to your ideas, perspectives and active engagement as we work together to drive innovation and create meaningful opportunities in the services sector. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, for the warm welcome and outlining the context of this important launch event. Now, we may request Dr. Arvind Virmani, sir, to kindly address the gathering at the inaugural address. Sir.
Thank you. Honorable guests, media. I want to start by kind of congratulating the NITI CEO and the PD, Dr. Pant, because in my 50 years of service in government, this is the first time I have seen so much focus on services. As you will hear from many people, the importance of services. Of course, I have worked on services, one of my old colleagues is here, but it always used to be in an international context. We never really focused on the domestic context of services. So, I really think it's noteworthy, the formation of this division and the amount of work which has been achieved, and you will see many examples of that over the next several months. That said, very importantly said, and of course CEO will speak on the details, I want to make a couple of points from my perspective. I always start by saying, as an economist, of course we also have a CA here, but let me start. Traditionally we've thought of services, if you see the common perception, there are these modern services, IT services, high wage, high productivity, high skills, but limited. Okay? That's the idea in the minds of people. And then you have all these traditional low wage, low productivity services, and when you think of it, you think of construction workers carrying bricks or something, or a household worker in a house. But as these reports will bring out, the situation is much more complex than that. And what I want to do is just highlight a few points from the report which kind of bring out the complexity and the importance of focusing on the details of the service sector, because that's how it will generate jobs, high-wage jobs, high-productive jobs. So one table in the report talks about employment elasticities. So one of the great revelations for me also, you can think of services and in three categories. A is the modern services, which include computer and information, health, financial service, professional services. Usually what we generally think of as IT. And that has the highest employment elasticities of all services. So contrary to what we think that, okay, this is limited, this is just the high-end people, but the opportunities are great. So that's the first point I would make, that studying these things deeply will reveal these kind of things. Second point of I would like to make is that even in traditional services, take construction, there is actually a productivity pyramid. We only look at the bottom of the pyramid. The construction workers on a village construction, somebody constructing a house. We don't think of the high end. And let me give you a few examples. A year or two ago, I learned that one of the largest construction companies in the country, I don't like to name names, so I won't name, you can figure it out, had 2 lakh vacancies of construction workers. Okay? So we never think of those possibilities. This is the complete high end. What do we mean by the high end? Think of constructing an EV plant or constructing a nuclear plant. That is the high end of construction. So there's a whole pyramid of opportunities there. What does that mean? That means skilling and capital. So you have to have the skills. So in an international context, we know that there is a huge demand for construction workers like plumbers and electricians across the world. Whether you think of UAE, you think of EU, USA, and it's increasing to the extent that people who are saying that half jokingly, that the only workers which will still be around after AI takes over everything, as a joke, not as a serious proposition, will be the construction workers, the plumbers and the electricians. The third point I want to make very quickly is again from this table, but we can classify these services in 3 categories, A, B and C. And again, I want to make a few points and then I'll hand over. I don't know how many minutes I've already taken. I like to stick to my time. But, so the second category includes transport, travel and trade repair, where the employment elasticities are somewhere in between. But again, going into the details, which I'm sure we will do. We are doing all these categories. We are going into the professional services. We go into these things. But I just want to give you a flavor of the kind of possibilities which exist. So if we think of trade and transport, again, we are used to thinking it's all conventional and all that. But I have actually seen platforms which are being built for the rural agricultural sector, where they are actually, we keep complaining about the lack of cold storage facilities. So there are companies now building platforms which are bringing in the cold storages which exist and building this logistic chain. So what is the problem? The problem is information and coordination. So again, new ways of looking at conventional problems and the huge opportunities that exist in all these. Another one which is one of my favorites is repair and maintenance. Okay, so what is it? Again, if you think of repair and maintenance, it's all about skills and tools. Okay, when you are at a very low end, you have authority, everything is a nail, right? You bang and fix things. I've seen it myself in my own house. But when you move up the pyramid, you have sophisticated tools. You will have a drill. Instead of hammering away, you drill it. Again, I'm just giving you these examples to give you a flavor of the possibilities. And finally, there are a whole bunch of other things I can give you examples, but tourism. Okay, we keep saying, okay, there are examples in Kerala and other places where the opportunities in the tourism sector is not being exploited. So what is the problem? Again, as an economist, I'll leave you with economic thought. I have many other points, but I think I'll end with that. It's a problem of information and coordination. So for tourism to progress, you have to have the hotels, you have to have the restaurants, you have to have the attraction, you have to have the entertainment, you got to have the security. So how to bring it all together? It won't happen unless you bring the whole package together. It's a problem of information and coordination. Maybe last point, which is I've already mentioned. So in some sense, I guess the broader point is institutional development. Okay, the institutional development has to be identified. In some cases, it is policies, rules, and procedures. And again, we are seeing that in our analysis of professional. But in many cases, it's institutional development. And what these studies will do is bring out and highlight the issues which we need to address. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir, for sharing your vision and insights on the role of the services sector. So now we have with us Dr. V. N18L, sir, Chief Economic Advisor. So may I request you, sir, for a special address, please.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. Like you, I have also come here to grasp and internalize the data which reports that they have launched, and I also hope that this will be a continuing feature. As Dr. Virmani pointed out, this has been a gap, and I am very grateful to the CEO of NITI Aayog and his entire team for making this effort to bridge this important gap in the data that we have with respect to services sector. As I was coming into this meeting, we saw the headline story about Amazon laying off about 30,000 workers because of, according to the headlines, because of AI-related impact. So this report couldn't be timelier, and going forward, it is going to be very important because we do have to understand the intersectoral shifts that are happening between manufacturing and services. And I'm also equally gratified and happy that NITI Aayog has chosen to focus on state level differentiation and distinction of data as to which states are doing well in which areas, and also with respect to the working conditions. So I think it's a very, very data rich report, and we all are assembled here to understand more about the richness of the content, the inferences we can draw from it, and how to use it in our reporting as far as the media is concerned, and as far as the policy makers on this side of the table are concerned, how to make use of it to guide the growth of the country across the three main sectors: agriculture, manufacturing, and services. Therefore, once again, on behalf of all of you here, I express my gratefulness and commendation to the NITI Aayog management and the team for bringing this out and to continue to enrich us with these kinds of reports and insights. Thank you very much. Back to you.
Thank you very much, sir, for highlighting the importance of the services sector. So now we are privileged to have with us Chief Executive Officer, B.V.R. Subrahmanyam, sir. So I request, sir, to kindly address the special address to gathering.
Dear Dr. Virmani, Member NITI Aayog, friend and colleague, Chief Economic Advisor Dr. N18L, my colleague Sonia Pant, respected dignitaries who have come to attend this half-day workshop seminar which has been organized. It's a very important day because, as Dr. Virmani has said, barring trade and trade-related matters, we are never focused on services as a sector worthy of attending to common thematic issues which afflict the sector across the board. For whatever reason, if you actually today in another hour or so, we should get the Joint Secretary from Commerce, Darpan Jain, here. I mean, he probably handles 40 departments when he has to handle services. So if you have 40 departments, you realize how difficult it is to handle services. And that was the genesis of actually NITI creating a services division, saying that let there be one place at least where people pay focused attention to services. And the reason is very simple. I mean, this is more than half the economy is services. 55% of your GVA is services. Almost a third, 30% of your employment is in services. And if you have to look at a structural transformation, a lot of people talk about agricultural employment shifting to manufacturing. Equally large number are probably shifting from agriculture to services also. So this can be as much of an absorber of rural labor as industry can be. So while we focus a lot on manufacturing, services somehow tends to fall between the stools. Number one. Two, India has been phenomenally successful in one area of services, broadly, as Dr. Virmani said, IT. So IT, if you expand it to include, BPOs, global capability centers, that bundle is presumed to be services. You actually look at services, the WTO has a classification of 12 services. I mean, you've got teachers and professors here, they are in the service sector, we have a couple of doctors here, they are in the service sector, so education, healthcare, tourism, travel, transport, logistics, retail, everything is services. And we don't realize that the potential of this is enormous if we pay focused attention. If you look at the developed economies in the West, they are actually services economies. And currently we are doing negotiations all over Europe and this and that, the asks from their side are always service related, not manufacturing related, because that's where their strengths are. And if India is to become a developed nation, which is the goal of our Prime Minister, Vikasit Bharat, I think services has to play an equal, if not a most important role in driving our growth to become Vikasit Bharat. 55% of our GDP, 30% of our employment, that's not a small number. We have about 60 odd crore people in our working force, 63. Of about 19 crores are in services. That's almost 30%. That's a huge significant number, and it's probably going to go up. And if you see the share of the economy of services in the last 10 years, it has seen the most substantial growth. In employment also, it is one area which is showing growth. So it cannot be ignored, left aside, and that's why this division was formed in NITI. This is today we are releasing 2 reports. Normally NITI releases 1 report at a time, but both reports are ready. But they address 2 critical areas. Looking at services through the value added lens, GVA lens. What is the contribution of various subcategories of services to the economy at the national level and state level, and do a very detailed analysis of that. And the second report is on employment in services, looking at what is services employment. And we may think that services are related to Bangalore or Hyderabad or Chennai or Noida. It's not though. There is services all over the country. Anybody is doing a retail shop in some remote corner of, say, Jharkhand is also in service sector. The question is, how do you upscale them? How do you take advantage of that? And the biggest point is, while we have 19 crore employees in this sector as a workforce, there's been addition of 4 crore jobs in this sector in the last 6 years. So this is the most dynamic sector at the moment in terms of job creation. For whatever reason, maybe manufacturing is having other challenges relating to, because productivity reduces labor requirement. But services, irrespective of that, is seeing the least productivity enhancements. Maybe AI will do something. But because of that, as services demand increases, jobs are going to increase. Actually, that's what is there for the foreseeable future. And particularly services where human interface and contact are essential. AI and other frontier technologies can be an aid, but can never replace the human. So, as somebody said, a plumber, a carpenter, a healthcare worker are never going to be completely automated out. So that is there. The 2 reports go into great detail. They highlight what's there at the national level. They also look at it state-wise. And so there are lessons for states, and hence this workshop. And I think Sonia and her team, which is now a good enough team, it's one of the largest teams in the government working only on services below her, will be spreading the message across the country, because it's for states also to learn from this, because this is an area where states have a huge role to play. Number one, services are not capital intensive, so they are actually delivered by individuals, which means the individuals need to be trained, which means it's education and skill, and both these subjects are totally with states. The clear guidance to states is, if you want to catch up, invest in education and skilling. You don't need, fancy buildings. First invest in people. If today you ask any investor, where will you put up your next services hub? The first thing they look at is, what is my catchment area and who are the people whom I can get? So, I need 30,000 people suddenly. Okay, so Amazon may lay off 20,000 in the US, they may hire 20,000 in India. They'll say, where will I get the 20,000? So, while there was criticism long ago about, private engineering colleges and, low quality, it really doesn't matter. The boom that has led to, and the education quality improves because of supply, demand and other pressures. The reports also bring out some issues in these sectors, and there will be presentations which will be shared with the media also. There are a lot of gaps. There is an urban-rural gap. 60% people in urban areas are in services. In rural areas, less than 20%. There is a gender gap. The number of men in services is more than that in women. There is a wage gap between men and women. So I think these issues have to be addressed, and they vary sector by sector. And I think it's important to bridge those. The biggest lesson to states is, have strategies for, that's the IT secretary from Telangana. He was former NITI colleague here, Sanjay. So you need to have state level strategies in education, in skilling, whatever little basic infra is needed for the services sector. If you want tourism, and PM Saab keeps talking about tourism as a driver of growth, it won't happen just because you have a fantastic monument. You also need the entire experience, including the people, beginning with the cab driver, the guide, the hotel, the receptionist, the whole thing. So, till you don't have the skills, you don't. If Kerala could transform itself in tourism, it is because it manages the experience very well. Goa manages the experience very well. To do that, it's all HR, human resource. States need to do that. The second, AI and tech are great assets as far as the service sector is concerned. They improve productivity, they improve service quality, they personalize services. So I think that is a major area we need to embed AI and technology into their own trade. With these, if individual states have strategies, there is no state in India which cannot capitalize on the service sector. You may have issues in manufacturing. Manufacturing, there is a physical product. So there are always costs of logistics, If you are in one corner of the country and you have to supply to another corner, logistics makes it. Take cement, for example. Cement doesn't live nationally. Cement is all very localized markets. Services are far different. So every region can capitalize on some part of services or not. And interestingly, in the analysis which will come out in the presentation, states have been categorized into 4 categories. You see, the 4 categories are based on how big is the services sector there and how fast are they growing. So you have high services share, high growth. And the last is low services share, low growth. Each has to have a different strategy so that they can move up in services. But the simple point is, per capita incomes are rising fastest in services. We need to give a push, consolidated push. And it will continue to be with multiple ministries. There is no escaping that. The lawyers are different from chartered accountant, they're different from doctors, they're different from engineers. However, there are a lot of common issues across sectors. And the opportunity for pushing this is very high. I wish Sonia and her team all success, that they carry this message to states. We hope states come out with their own services strategies so that they can leverage what they are strong at. It could be just culinary art. Somebody is fantastic in food. That can become, you don't go to Paris only to see the Louvre, right? You also go to eat food there. So you go to Louvre for other reasons also nowadays. But so that is that. I wish them all the success, and let's look forward to the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for sharing insightful perspective and highlighting the importance of the services sector. So now to give us the brief overview of the 2 reports being launched today, I invite Dr. Sonia Pan to make a short presentation on highlighting the key findings.
After the presentation.
Yeah. Thank you, Deepak, and thank you to all the dignitaries who gave their introductory remarks. And it's really encouraging to hear such good words from such senior level officers. I would make a brief presentation on both the reports, just highlighting key elements. As Sir said, we will be sharing this presentation later on. And so I think we can begin. We can move to the next slide. Yeah, so this is a slide which kind of tells you what is the work that we are doing in the services division, and it kind of puts it all together. Our work began last year when we started looking at this concordance analysis. So when we started working on services, we realized that there are different sources of data and they do not speak to each other. Trade data looks different, GVA data looks different, employment data is different, FDI data is different, and we were kind of struggling to understand how do we make these different data come together and speak to each other. So what we started with is that we started working a 15 sector classification of services. Primarily, initially this classification that we developed was based on how data is captured in exports, in value added and in employment. And the backup for this entire 15 sector classification was a heuristic concordance approach, which was basically this mapping was developed to see whatever is the available data at the highest level of aggregation. And then we saw what is the specific subsectors, and this mapping was based on expert judgment, industry insights and knowledge, and also what are the available definitions in each of these data sets. So once and this culminated into a working paper which came out last year around the same time, and based on this entire approach of looking at services data across different dimensions, we started analyzing the services sector as a whole, and we all know that services is heterogeneous. There are several subsectors, and we also started looking at the subsectors. So we started looking at different dimensions, and those dimensions are listed in front of you. So we looked at the gross value added, we looked at employment. Those are the two reports that we are unveiling today. We also looked at regulations so that we could work on services standards. Our productivity report is also on its way, and here we are looking at labor productivity, capital productivity and total factor productivity in services. Then we are also working on a comprehensive report on trade, where we look at trade from very different dimensions, because today we have data which is looking at trade from different dimensions. So we not only look at the conventional balance of payment data which our central bank provides and the IMF and WTO also provides, we also look at trade and value added data which the OECD and WTO provides, and see what are the nuances that emerge from it, because this is the crucial linkage of services with manufacturing. The servicification of manufacturing angle comes out from this data set. We also look at modal data, because we all know internationally service and even nationally services are delivered across 4 modes of supply, and it is generally said that India has a big advantage in mode 1, which is cross-border supply. So we look at data modally, and which is through this trade and services data across modes of supply. This is a data set which the WTO has come out with, and we also have a bilateral services trade data. Generally it is said that we do not know bilateral trade and services data because that is the most difficult thing to find, but BATIS, again an OECD and WTO initiative, they have come out with bilateral data, and we take a peek in this and see what is India trading bilaterally and how does it determine our future strategy. We are also looking at foreign direct investment, and we are very happy that we've got a minefield of data from DPIIT, and I'm so happy that this is a new work that will come out in FDI. I don't think so that there is much on this field on services, where we look at nationally and we also look at subnationally. The other work in progress, while we were looking at these dimensions, we realized that certain sectors and certain subsectors emerge as very important, and so the sectoral lens becomes very important, and therefore we have a number of sectoral studies which are presently underway, which are looking at different sectors such as professional services, such as financial services, so on and so forth. So the strategy that we adopt in this division is a multi-pronged strategy so that we can have a complete understanding of the services sector. Next slide, please. Yeah, so this is the launch, and we are very thankful to CEO sir and all of you to be here today so that we can unveil these 2 reports. Next slide, please. So what is new and noteworthy in these 2 reports? So there are 3 broad things which I think are worthy of your attention. The first is, it is a first of its kind assessment which looks at the sector in a comprehensive manner as far as output and employment is concerned. Secondly, we move into state level dynamics. We go deep into the state level insights as far as possible and as far as the data lets us do. Third is that we are doing a concordance based approach, so we give you data which is more disaggregated as compared to what is generally available for services. Then if we were to look at these 5 categories in terms of what do these reports do, so the GVA report in terms of its focus, it's on structural transformation, and we are looking at national and state level trends. Whereas if you look at the employment report, we focus on employment patterns. The GVA report is looking at growth patterns, sectoral resilience, etc. And the employment report looks at 7 key dimensions of employment. These dimensions help us to understand who is working in services, what are they working on, and under what conditions do they operate. So these 3 questions will help policymakers to look at the future perspective. If we were to look at now the regional and sectoral insights, the GVA report, we have tried to do a convergence analysis based on whatever data we have, and we are trying to see whether there is regional catch-up in the or convergence in the services-led growth. As far as the employment report is concerned, a new thing that has been done is we've tried to sketch out the entire employment landscape of India. And this we have done on the basis of the shares, employment shares that are there in the PLFS data. We have used the population figure and tried to give you some broad ballpark numbers. So this is done for the whole economy, and we've also gone and done it deeply in a more microscopic lens for the several services subsectors. And what is the analytical framework we've used? As CEO sir mentioned, we've used a 4-quadrant approach in GVA, whereas in employment we've used a dimension and region specific approach. And the last one are the data sources. It is publicly available data which the MOSPI gives us. Next slide please. So this slide basically is telling us what has happened from 2011-12 to 2023-24. Here you will see that if we were to look at the primary sector, there has been a decline in its contribution to the national output. So decline from 21.7% to 16.7%. The secondary sector is also almost the same with a marginal decline. But what has grown is services. And what has grown in services? It is 13% to 17.6%. This is the major growth, which is your real estate, ownership of dwellings and professional services. So the MOSPI data gives us a clubbing of the entire data set. It's very difficult to find out what exactly in this has grown. Through our concordance approach, we've tried to break it as far as possible, and that comes out in the next slide. So if we were to now look at it in terms of top 7 and bottom 7 sector, you'll see trade and repair continues to be very important even in 23-24. The next is professional services, other business services. This also includes real estate. So we don't really know what is the division between real estate and other professional services, but we could classify computer and information services separately, and you can see the increase. It has more than doubled from 2.93 to 6.67. And then we have the bottom sectors which are listed in the lower panel of the slide. Next please. So we now come to the state specific analysis that was done in the GVA report, and you will see, and what we found was that 28 out of 33 states recorded services shares which were higher than what they have in 2011-12. And what a very interesting thing that we found out was that the smaller states, which includes the hill states, the northeast states and other states, they are catching up quickly, and their catching up is happening through education, through health and through public services. We also found that 10 out of 33 states today have GVA of more than 60%. So services contribute more than 60% of their total GSVA. And there we also found a regional divide. We found that southern and western states dominate on modern services, whereas the other states are focusing more on traditional services. We also undertook a convergence analysis, as I just mentioned, and we tried to study whether the Indian states are becoming more similar to each other in terms of their structural transformation, their structural composition, particularly with respect to services share, and we did the sigma and the beta convergence. And what we found was that even though interstate disparities have increased modestly, so this would be the sigma convergence, in beta convergence we found a highly significant evidence of catch up. So gradually states are catching up, and that is a good news for us. Next slide please. So based on this analysis, we developed a policy roadmap, and this was based on sectoral prioritization as well as sector specific prioritization. So we on the sectors, we looked at GVA and the average growth of GVA. So what is the share and what is at what rate are they growing, and we divided the sectors into engines of growth which had both high GVA and high growth rates. These were sectors like computers, like professionals, like trade and repair, education, etc. And the strategy, which is detailed much more in the report, was to expand. If we look at mature giants, these are the sectors which had a high GVA share, but the rate of growth is slowly coming down. So here we need to modernize. Similarly, we had emerging stars and we had struggling segments which needed reform. From the state level analysis, we found that generally there is a positive association between the per capita income and the average services share. So services is associated with rising income. That was coming out clearly, though we found very interesting case of some outlier states, and I will not go into that because you should see the report for which is the outlier states and how do they function. And based on that, we divided states into 4 categories, and we used this pinwheel 3 types of unlock to see how do we strategize and what kind of reforms we can do. And based on CEO sir's guidance, we have prepared a state level annex for both the reports, and it will be great if you can go through, and we'll seek the guidance of the state governments and the state level officers who are there today to take this process forward even more. So let's move on. I'll quickly finish the employment also. So as sir just mentioned that there are about services is now employing around 188 million or about 19 crore people, which is 30% of the workforce, and 40 million jobs have been added in the last 6 years, but our 30% is still lacking the global average, which is 50%. And what is interesting is the improvement in elasticity in the pre and post COVID services, which members were just mentioned about. Here again, if we were to look at the top and the bottom 7, that is explained in the right hand panel of the slide, and you will see which sectors are constituting the top and the bottom. Next slide please. So interestingly, when we did the elasticity, we found a subsectoral duality. So if you see this chart, I'll quickly explain this chart. So on the y-axis, we have what is the share of the subsector in the services employment share, and then on the right side, we have what is the share of the subsector in the GVA. And the bubble size indicates the employment elasticity. The green bubble indicates the elasticity is more than or equal to 0.5. and so on and so forth. What we find here is that the 80% of traditional sectors, so 80% of the employment is in traditional sectors. These are the sectors which have low employment elasticity, and this works out to about 155 million people. So most of the people working in services are working in the traditional services sector, whereas modern services sector, which have better elasticity and better wages as well as better global linkages and better exports, also employ a lesser number of people. Next slide please. So based on this entire analysis, we conducted a 7-dimensional analysis, and we saw spatial concentration, and there we found that 61% of employment in urban areas is in services, whereas only 19% in rural areas. And if we were to look at women, this divide becomes even more intense. And over the years, we saw that women participation has declined in services. This is broadly more because of the rural aspect coming into gender participation. If you look at employment type, we saw a very interesting dichotomy that both regular wage and self-employment are important. So as per our estimations, about half of services workers, which is about 96 million, are in regular wages. So they are regular salaried employees. That's a huge number. No other sector in India shows this kind of number. But at the same time, about 45% of the people are in self-employment. So that is the dichotomy of this sector. And about only 4% are in casual employment status. If you look at the age distribution, it is anchored in the primary age, which is 30 to 40 years. Education, we found that graduates were getting more jobs, but as you increased education, we were finding a lot of people also getting into self-employment. So definitely it is indicative of a mismatch between education level and what the industry wants. So there is a skill mismatch between demand and supply coming out here. We saw majority of the people in services are informal. So their employment does not give them job security or social protection, and rural women are earning much less than their male counterparts, whereas urban women earn better. And we also found hope in sectors such as ICT and healthcare, education, etc., where the earnings of women were actually matching those of men, or maybe a little lesser, and sometimes even higher. So that is something which is showing us a way forward in terms of strategy. Next please. So this is an interesting analysis in terms of what happened in the states. So if you'll see the two maps, you'll see the first one looks at share and the next one looks at numbers. So here you will see that that states which have higher share in services have lower numbers, and here the population scale is or the size of the population is actually influencing this kind of dynamics. And the states where there are larger number of people employed in services, though the share is still lesser, are mostly in traditional services. So I can clearly say that traditional services dominate high employment, and in terms of the output being less, it means low productivity. Whereas if you look at smaller states, then these states are focused on education, health and public administration. Southern and western states are focused more on modern services. Next please. So based on this entire analysis, we have proposed a four-pronged approach, which is on the policy areas, and as I mentioned, we also have specific state level strategies. Next please. So the way forward, this we will be discussing with the stakeholders in our next session. So I think we'll skip this and move on to the next one. So broadly, this is the last slide, and I like to conclude by saying that services are at an inflection point, at a critical inflection point today, and these 5 broad things tell us about the inflection point. So there is a digital transformation and servicification happening across the economy. We have a demographic dividend, but we have a problem in terms of skilling focus. There is blended services model coming up, which means services have to be looked at as a bundle. Services and goods are bundled together, blended model. We need investment in infrastructure. We need to focus on trade, on international markets to make India a global services hub. And we will have, just the way we have value chain in goods, we also have value chain in services. And there is a huge scope for India to rise very high in this services value chain. If we have it right, it can be the reason which can power India to a developed nation status. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am, for the concise and informative presentation. And so now that time has come, the moment we all have been waiting for, the official launch of the 2 reports on the India service sector employment. So now I request Honorable Member Sir, CEO Sir, Chief Economic Advisor Dr. Sonia Pan to kindly unveil the report. I request my team to kindly assist.
Have a good